Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. Here is something that should make every American sit up and pay attention. Just last month, Iran, Russia, and China conducted their fourth joint naval exercise in the Gulf of Oman. Fourth time, folks. These three powers, our three biggest adversaries on the planet, are literally practicing warfare together in one of the most strategic waterways in the world. And if you think this is just some routine military cooperation, some symbolic show of friendship, you are missing the bigger picture. What we are witnessing is the formation of an anti-American axis that poses the most serious threat to United States dominance since the Cold War. And here is the hard truth that nobody in Washington wants to say out loud. We are going to have to deal with Iran militarily, and we are going to have to do it soon, before this axis becomes so entrenched that taking action becomes impossible without triggering World War III. I know that sounds dramatic. I know some of you are thinking, here we go again, another war in the Middle East. Have we not learned our lesson? But let me walk you through exactly why this situation is different, why the threat is existential, and why military action against Iran is not just an option on the table. It is becoming a strategic necessity that we cannot avoid if we want to preserve American power in the 21st century. Let me start by explaining what this Russia-China-Iran axis actually means in practical terms. This is not just three countries that happen to dislike America deciding to be friends. This is a deliberate, coordinated effort to build an alternative power structure that can challenge and ultimately replace American-led global order. Each of these three countries brings something specific to the table, and together they create a combination that is frankly terrifying from an American strategic perspective. China brings economic power. They have got the money, the manufacturing capacity, the technology, the ability to finance massive infrastructure projects around the world. They are the world's factory, the world's biggest trading nation, and increasingly the world's banker for countries that cannot get loans from Western institutions. Russia brings military power and energy resources. They have got nuclear weapons, advanced military technology, combat experience, and massive reserves of oil and gas that Europe and Asia desperately need. And Iran brings something equally important: geographic position. Look at a map, folks. Iran sits right in the middle of everything. They control the northern shore of the Persian Gulf. They dominate the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil passes through every single day. They border the Caspian Sea. They have influence in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen. Iran is the keystone of the Middle East. If you want to project power from Asia into the Middle East and beyond, if you want to challenge American dominance in the region, you need Iran. China and Russia understand this perfect. So what we are seeing is not just cooperation, it is integration. These three countries are building interconnected military capabilities, economic systems, and political strategies specifically designed to counter American power. The naval exercises I mentioned, those are not just photo ops. They are practicing how to operate together, how to combine their forces, how to challenge American naval dominance in critical regions. Russia provides Iran with advanced weapon systems, air defense technology, satellite intelligence. China buys Iranian oil despite American sanctions, invests in Iranian infrastructure, provides technology and equipment. In return, Iran gives both of them a foothold in the Middle East, a way to challenge American presence in the region without directly confronting us themselves. And here is what really keeps me up at night. This axis is not defensive. It is offensive. These countries are not banding together to protect themselves from American aggression. They are banding together to actively reshape the global order, to push America out of regions where we have been dominant since World War II, to create a world where authoritarian powers make the rules instead of democracies. Look at what each of them is doing. China is building military bases across the Pacific and Indian Oceans, claiming territory that does not belong to them, threatening Taiwan, bullying their neighbors, trying to dominate global trade routes. Russia invaded Ukraine, has troops in Syria, interferes in elections across Europe and America, uses energy as a weapon against European countries. And Iran is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. They fund Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, militias in Iraq and Syria. They are racing toward a nuclear weapon. They attack shipping in international waters. They take hostages. They chant death to America in their parliament. Now, some people say, okay, these are bad actors, but why does it require military action? Why cannot we just contain them, sanction them, compete with them economically and diplomatically? And look, I wish that were possible. I really do. But here is the reality. Sanctions and diplomacy only work when the other side believes that military force is ultimately on the table if they cross certain red lines. And right now, after 20 years of wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, after the chaotic withdrawal from Kabul, our adversaries do not believe we have the will to use military force anymore. They think America is tired, divided, weak, unwilling to fight. And you know what? They are testing that theory every single day. Iran has been attacking American forces and American interests for decades. They killed hundreds of American soldiers in Iraq with roadside bombs and weapons they supplied to militias. They attacked Saudi oil facilities. They seized tankers in the Gulf. They shot down an American drone. They provided drones to Russia to use against Ukraine. And what have we done? We have sanctioned them. We have condemned them. We have sent strongly worded messages, but we have not actually made them pay a real price. This is the fundamental problem with our Iran policy for the last 45 years. Ever since the Iranian Revolution in 1979, ever since they took our embassy hostage and humiliated America on the world stage, we have been treating Iran like a problem to be managed rather than a threat to be eliminated. We have tried containment, we have tried engagement, we have tried sanctions, we have tried covert action. None of it has worked. Iran today is more powerful, more aggressive, and more dangerous than at any point in its history. And now they have got powerful friends. The Russia-China-Iran axis changes everything because it means Iran is no longer isolated. For most of the last 4 decades, Iran has been largely alone. Sure, they had some support from Syria, some relationship with Russia, but fundamentally they were a pariah state that most of the world avoided. That is not true anymore. Now they are part of a bloc, a real alternative power structure. This gives them protection, resources, and most importantly, confidence to be even more aggressive. Think about what this means strategically. If we wait another 5 years, another 10 years, this axis is going to be so deeply integrated that you cannot hit one without hitting all three. If we take military action against Iran's nuclear facilities or their military infrastructure, will China and Russia just stand by and watch? Or will they provide intelligence to help Iran defend itself? Will they supply advanced weapons in real time? Will they use the conflict as an opportunity to make moves elsewhere? China in Taiwan, Russia in Eastern Europe. This is why the window for action is closing. Right now, in 2026, this axis is still in formation. The relationships are strong, but not yet unbreakable. The military integration is developing, but not yet complete. If America acts decisively against Iran now, yes, there will be costs. Yes, Russia and China will complain and maybe impose some economic consequences, but they are not going to go to war over Iran. Not yet. But give it 5 more years of joint military exercises, of integrated defense systems, of economic interdependence, and that calculation might change. Let me talk about what Iran specifically brings to this axis that makes them so dangerous. First and most obviously, the nuclear program. Iran has been pursuing nuclear weapons capability for decades. They claim it is peaceful nuclear energy. Nobody believes that. Why would a country sitting on some of the largest oil and gas reserves in the world need nuclear power? They want the bomb, period. And they are getting close. Every intelligence assessment suggests Iran is now only weeks or months away from having enough enriched uranium for a nuclear weapon if they decide to actually build one. The JCPOA, that nuclear deal Obama signed and Trump pulled out of, that is dead. Iran is not even pretending to comply anymore. They are enriching uranium to levels that have no civilian purpose. They are blocking international inspectors. They are building facilities deep underground that are designed to survive airstrikes. Once Iran gets nuclear weapons, the entire strategic picture in the Middle East changes permanently. You think Iran is aggressive now. Imagine how they will behave when they have nuclear deterrent. They will be untouchable. They will be able to expand their influence, support more terrorism, threaten their neighbors, and there will be nothing we can do about it short of nuclear war. Israel knows this, which is why they have been preparing for years to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. Saudi Arabia knows this, which is why they are quietly developing their own nuclear program. If Iran goes nuclear, we're looking at nuclear proliferation across the Middle East, at multiple countries with nuclear weapons in the most unstable region on Earth. And here is where the Russia and China connection becomes absolutely critical. Iran's nuclear program exists because of Russian and Chinese help. Russia built Iran's nuclear reactors. China has provided technology and equipment. Both of them have blocked serious international action against Iran's nuclear program at the United Nations Security Council. They want Iran to have nuclear weapons because it serves their interests. A nuclear Iran means permanent instability in the Middle East, which means higher oil prices, which benefits Russia's economy. It means America is tied down dealing with Middle East crises instead of focusing on Asia, which benefits China's ambitions. It means the entire region becomes a contested space where American influence is constantly challenged. So, when we talk about taking military action against Iran, we are not just stopping one country's nuclear program. We are talking about breaking up this axis before it becomes too strong to break. We are talking about sending a message to Russia and China that America still has the will and capability to defend its interests with force when necessary. We are talking about preserving the global order that has kept the peace and enabled prosperity for 75 years. Now, what would military action against Iran actually look like? I am not talking about invasion, about regime change, about occupation. We learned from Iraq that those kinds of operations are incredibly costly and do not achieve their objectives. What I am talking about is a sustained air campaign targeting Iran's nuclear facilities, their missile production sites, their drone factories, their naval bases, their command and control infrastructure, and critically, the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is the real power in Iran and the organization responsible for most of Iran's terrorism and aggression. The goal would not be to occupy Iran or overthrow the government, although that would be a nice bonus if the Iranian people decided to rise up while their government was reeling. The goal would be to set back Iran's military capabilities by a decade or more, to eliminate their nuclear program completely, to destroy their ability to threaten shipping in the Gulf, to attack their neighbors, to supply weapons to terrorist groups. Basically, to turn Iran from an aggressive regional power into a contained, weakened state that cannot threaten American interests. Could we do this militarily? Absolutely. The United States military, despite all the talk of Chinese advances and Russian modernization, is still by far the most powerful military force on the planet. We have the capability to suppress Iranian air defenses, to hit targets anywhere in Iran, to sustain operations for as long as necessary. Iran's military is large, but it is not particularly sophisticated. Their air force is flying planes from the 1970s. Their navy is a bunch of speedboats and mines. Their most dangerous capabilities are missiles and drones, And while those could do damage, they are not going to defeat American military power. The real question is not, can we do it? It is, will we do it? And will we accept the costs? Because yes, there will be costs. Iran will retaliate. They will probably attack American forces in Iraq and Syria. They will definitely hit Israel with missiles. They will activate Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, militias in Iraq. They will try to close the Strait of Hormuz, which will spike oil prices globally. They will conduct terrorism, maybe even inside the United States. Russia and China will impose economic sanctions, will block us in the UN, will ramp up their own aggressive actions elsewhere to take advantage of America being focused on Iran. But here is what I want you to understand. Those costs, as real and painful as they will be, are manageable. What is not manageable is allowing this Russia, China, Iran axis to consolidate, to grow stronger to the point where it can actually challenge American power globally. If we act now, we pay a price in the short term, but we secure American dominance for decades to come. If we wait, if we hope the problem will go away or can be solved diplomatically, we are going to wake up in a world where America is no longer the dominant power, where authoritarians make the rules, where our allies cannot count on us, where our economy suffers because we do not control critical trade routes and resources. Look at the broader geopolitical picture here. We talked in my last analysis about how global power is shifting from the Atlantic to the Pacific, about how China is rising and competing with America for dominance in the most important region of the world. That competition, that new Cold War, is going to define this century. And just like in the last Cold War with the Soviet Union, regional conflicts matter. They matter because they demonstrate resolve, because they show allies and adversaries alike whether America has the will to defend its interests. If we allow Iran to continue operating freely, to develop nuclear weapons, to challenge American presence in the Middle East with the backing of Russia and China, what message does that send to our allies in Asia, to Japan, to South Korea, to Taiwan, to the Philippines? It tells them that when China gets aggressive, when they start making demands, maybe America will not be there to back them up either. It tells them they need to cut their own deals with Beijing. They need to hedge their bets. They cannot rely solely on American protection. Conversely, if we take decisive action against Iran, if we demonstrate that America will use military force when our red lines are crossed, it sends the opposite message. It tells our allies they can count on us. It tells China that we are not going to allow them to reshape the global order through partnerships with rogue states. It tells Russia that there are limits to what they can get away with. It reestablishes American credibility and American deterrence. The Middle East is not some distant, irrelevant region that we can afford to ignore while we focus on Asia. The Middle East is connected to everything. It has oil and gas that power the global economy. It has trade routes that connect Europe, Asia, and Africa. It has some of our closest allies, Israel and Saudi Arabia and the UAE. And critically, it is now a major front in the competition with China and Russia. If we lose the Middle East, if that region falls under the influence of the Russia-China-Iran axis, we lose the ability to shape global affairs. We become just another powerful country, not the superpower that sets the rules. Iran is the linchpin of that axis in the Middle East. Take out Iran's military capabilities, destroy their nuclear program, and suddenly Russia and China lose their main partner in the region. Hezbollah loses its primary sponsor. The Houthis lose their weapons supply. The militias in Iraq and Syria lose their backing. The entire network of anti-American forces in the region weakens significantly. And our allies, Israel and the Gulf states, become much more secure, much more able to maintain stability without constant American intervention. Some people will say this sounds like the same arguments we heard before Iraq, that we are exaggerating the threat, that military action will make things worse, not better. And I understand that skepticism. Iraq was a disaster in many ways. We went in based on faulty intelligence about weapons of mass destruction. We had no plan for what came after. We ended up spending trillions of dollars and thousands of American lives in a war that achieved very little. But Iran is not Iraq. Saddam Hussein was contained, weakened, not really a threat to anyone outside his own country by 2003. Iran is the opposite. They are growing stronger every year, more aggressive, more capable, more dangerous. The intelligence on their nuclear program is not ambiguous like it was with Iraq's WMDs. Everyone agrees they are pursuing nuclear weapons. The question is only how close they are. And we are not talking about invasion and occupation. We are talking about a targeted military campaign with specific, achievable objectives that will significantly weaken a major threat to American interests. The other big difference is the international context. When we invaded Iraq, we were the sole superpower, acting basically unilaterally despite some coalition support. The world was still relatively stable, Russia was weak, China was not yet a peer competitor. Now, the situation is completely different. We are in a period of great power competition. The international order is contested. Our adversaries are coordinating against us. In this environment, showing strength, showing resolve, showing that we will use military force to defend our interests, this is not optional. It is essential. I also want to address the concern about war fatigue, about the American people not supporting another military conflict in the Middle East. And look, I get it. We are tired. 20 years of war in Afghanistan and Iraq, that took a toll on this country. But here is the thing. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq were wars of choice to some extent. We chose to invade those countries. We chose to try to build nations. We chose to stay for 2 decades trying to create stable democracies. And yes, those choices were mistakes in many ways. But action against Iran would not be a war of choice. It would be a necessary military operation to address a clear and present danger to American security. Iran is not some theoretical threat. They are actively working against American interests every single day. They are on the verge of nuclear weapons capability. They are partnered with our 2 biggest adversaries. This is not something we can just ignore and hope it goes away. And frankly, if we do not deal with Iran now, we are going to have to deal with them later, under much worse circumstances at much higher cost. Would you rather we take military action now, while Iran is still conventionally armed, while the Russia-China-Iran axis is still forming, while we have clear military superiority? Or would you rather we wait until Iran has nuclear weapons, until the axis is fully integrated, until China and Russia are even stronger, and then try to address the problem? The costs of action now are real, but the costs of inaction are much, much higher. Let me talk about Israel for a moment, because they are absolutely central to this whole equation. Israel faces an existential threat from Iran. Iran's leaders regularly talk about destroying Israel, about wiping it off the map. This is not just rhetoric. Iran funds Hezbollah in Lebanon, which has somewhere around 150,000 rockets pointed at Israeli cities. Iran funds Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza. Iran is working on nuclear weapons specifically to threaten Israel. From Israel's perspective, a nuclear Iran is an unacceptable threat that requires military action. Now, Israel has been preparing for years to strike Iran's nuclear facilities themselves. They have the capability, they have the will, they have been conducting intelligence operations inside Iran to map out targets and understand defenses. If America does not act, Israel will. And when Israel strikes Iran, Iran will retaliate massively. Hezbollah will launch thousands of rockets at Israeli cities. Iran will hit Israeli targets across the region. This could escalate into a major regional war that draws in the United States anyway. So we have a choice. We can take action against Iran on our timeline, with our planning, with our overwhelming military superiority in a way that maximizes the chance of success and minimizes the chance of escalation. Or we can wait for Israel to act and then get dragged into a war that we did not start under circumstances we do not control, possibly at a time when Iran is even more capable than they are now. From a strategic perspective, the first option is clearly better. The Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, they all see Iran as a major threat too. Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen fire missiles at Saudi cities. Iran-backed militias attack UAE interests. Iran tries to destabilize these governments, to export their revolution, to dominate the Gulf region. These countries want America to deal with Iran militarily. They might not say so publicly, but privately they have been urging American action for years. They will support us if we act. They will provide bases, intelligence, logistics. They understand that a weakened Iran is in their interest. So we would not be acting alone. We would have strong regional support from Israel and the Gulf states. We would have quiet support from other countries that are worried about the Russia-China-Iran axis, even if they would not say so publicly. This would not be America as the world's policeman going off on some unilateral adventure. This would be America leading a coalition of partners who share our interests in stopping Iran. The timing question is critical. Trump is back in office, and he has always been hawkish on Iran. He pulled out of the nuclear deal. He killed Soleimani, their top general. He imposed maximum pressure sanctions. He understands that Iran is a serious threat and that weakness invites aggression. If we are going to take military action against Iran, the Trump administration is the time to do it because we have a president who is willing to make tough decisions and who is not afraid of using American military power. The other factor is Israel's government. They have a right-wing coalition that is very focused on the Iran threat, that is not going to tolerate a nuclear Iran under any circumstances. The alignment between Washington and Jerusalem on this issue is probably as strong as it has ever been. This creates a window of opportunity for coordinated action that might not exist with different leadership in either country. China and Russia, they are watching all of this very carefully. They understand that if America takes military action against Iran, it is not just about Iran. It is about demonstrating American resolve. It is about showing that the Russia-China-Iran axis has limits, that America will not allow it to consolidate. Beijing and Moscow will complain loudly. They will impose some costs on us, but I do not believe they will risk direct military confrontation over Iran. Iran is useful to them, but it is not worth World War III. However, the longer we wait, the more deeply invested Russia and China become in Iran. The more integrated the axis becomes, the higher the risk that action against Iran could trigger a broader conflict. This is why I keep emphasizing that the window is closing. We need to act while we still can, while the costs are manageable, while we have clear advantage. The economic question is also important. Yes, military action against Iran will likely spike oil prices, at least temporarily. Iran will try to disrupt shipping in the Gulf. They might succeed in damaging some oil infrastructure. Markets will panic. But here is the thing. The global oil market is much more diversified than it was 20 years ago. American shale production, Canadian tar sands, Norwegian oil, Brazilian offshore. There are multiple sources. We are not as dependent on Middle East oil as we used to be. And any price spike from military action would be temporary. Once Iran's capability to disrupt shipping is destroyed, once the conflict winds down, prices will stabilize. Compare that to the long-term economic costs of allowing Iran to develop nuclear weapons and continue threatening the Gulf. Permanent instability in the region, constant threat of conflict, inability to invest in or develop resources, high insurance costs for shipping, possibility of actual nuclear war. Those costs would be catastrophic and ongoing. A short-term price spike from military action is much preferable to long-term economic disruption from an unchecked Iranian threat. Let me bring this back to the big picture one more time. We are in a competition for the future of the international order. Do we live in a world where democracies and free markets set the rules, where disputes are settled through institutions and international law, where smaller countries are protected and human rights matter? Or do we live in a world where authoritarian powers divide up spheres of influence, where might makes right, where weaker countries are bullied and coerced, where there are no rules except power? The Russia-China-Iran axis represents the authoritarian model. These are three countries that reject democratic governance, that suppress their own people, that use force and coercion to get what they want. If this axis succeeds in pushing America out of the Middle East, out of Asia, out of the position of global leadership, then the authoritarian model wins. And that would be catastrophic, not just for American interests, but for the entire world. Military action against Iran is not about oil. It is not about Israel alone. It is not even primarily about nuclear weapons. It is about preserving American power and the international order that American power has created and sustained. It is about making sure that when this era of great power competition is over, when we look back from 2050 or 2075, America is still the dominant power and the world still operates according to rules and values that we believe in. Iran is the weakest link in the authoritarian axis. They do not have nuclear weapons yet. They do not have the economic power of China or the nuclear arsenal of Russia. They are vulnerable to American military action in a way that China and Russia are not. If we strike Iran hard, if we eliminate their nuclear program and significantly degrade their military capabilities, we break the axis before it fully forms. We show China and Russia that there are costs to challenging American dominance. We reassure our allies that American power is real and that we will use it when necessary. The alternative is to continue with the same failed policies of the last 45 years. More sanctions that Iran evades with Russian and Chinese help. More negotiations that Iran uses to buy time for their nuclear program. More warnings and red lines that we do not enforce. And meanwhile, Iran gets closer to nuclear weapons, the axis gets stronger, our position gets weaker, and eventually we face a crisis where our options are much worse and much more dangerous than they are today. I know this is not what most people want to hear. I know the idea of another military conflict is unpopular. But sometimes leadership means making hard choices, means doing what is necessary, even when it is not popular. The threats we face are real. The Russia-China-Iran axis is real. The danger of a nuclear Iran is real. And the costs of inaction are greater than the costs of action. The time to act is now, while we still can, while we still have overwhelming military superiority, while the axis is still vulnerable. If we wait, if we hope the problem will solve itself or can be managed with half measures, we are going to look back with deep regret at the opportunity we missed to secure American power and protect American interests for generations to come. All right, folks, I appreciate you hearing me out on this one. Stay safe out there.